Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Swaggle Haas. And in this video, we got ourselves a Silver and Bronze Age Index update for the month of November. And yes, that is right. We are now in the apocalypse. We have fallen off of the cliff. This is the end of the comic book world as we know it. Total chaos, cats and dogs living together. It's total capitulation out there. So in this video, we're going to go through the charts, we're going to go through the graphs, and we're going to talk about what is really going on in the market. Honestly, even though it looks kind of bad, you would have known had you been watching these Silver and Bronze Age Index videos that the month of November was going to be the down month. And I am excited to say that, when we get to the end of the video, there's some interesting things that we can look at. And there are some correlations in other markets that I think are actually interesting to compare to comic books. And that might give us a little bit of a preview into what is to be coming in the next few months. But before I get into the video, if you guys could drop me a like or a comment or subscribe if you're enjoying the content, help support the channel, doing those things, I would appreciate it. But let's get into this video here today. Of course, the comic book index, you guys know the drill by now. It is the top 100 sold books per age, silver and bronze, highest volume of graded comic book counted in that month, final sale of the month, market close, aka, and I use all of the GPA data to calculate all of this stuff. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. This video gets a little bit dense. Swaggle Haas gets into these graphs and these numbers and it's boring. But guys, this is important. This is important stuff. This is serious business. This is comic books. Okay, we have to evaluate charts and graphs and look at numbers, not cool pictures on covers, okay? This is the comic book YouTube channel where all we do is look at lines and graphs. So here you can see Silver Age 100 Index. This is the month of October of 2022. Now, in the prior month of September, we had a little bit of an uptick. I think that uptick was actually due to some of the excitement coming off of San Diego Comic-Con and the announcements that were there. Or excuse me, actually it was D23 that had some announcements that gave that one a little bit of a lift. We saw that we did have a pullback at the $55,000 range. Well, where are we in the month of November? Last time I was talking about the projections being that November would be another big down month. And did we in fact fall off the cliff? Well, from my intro, you guys know that. Of course we fell off the cliff. We are down now to the $49,574 mark. That is not the largest drop-off we've seen since the index has been going down at the start of February of this year. We have had bigger month-to-month drop-offs, but all things considered, that is a pretty sizable pullback going from 55,000 to 49,000. Now, it's not all bad though, because this is really just kind of pulling us back in line to the trend, which we always talk about. And, when we get to the projections later on in the video, we're going to take a look at where we should be in December, and knowing that November was going to be the down month, and in theory that might put us perfectly back in line. So even though things are going down, it's kind of as expected. I think this is where we kind of knew what was going to happen based on prior months and prior history of how these comic book markets have behaved. But let's flash forward over to the Bronze Age Index here. Here we were in October around the $50,000 range, 50,703 to be exact. Now, I had made mention in my previous video that the Bronze Age was still a little bit too high. It needed to correct more than that of the Silver Age. So where did we go? And actually, we saw a pretty sizable drop off for the Bronze Age here, falling down to 43,887. It's really interesting with the Bronze Age because, the sales data for the Bronze Age, because it's a higher census, is always going to be a little bit more accurate overall. There's going to be more, numbers to pull from. And generally speaking, you saw a steady decline in these last few months or so, just incremental. But this last month in particular is really where, we saw a big drop off from the Bronze Age. And that is actually pretty surprising to me. I didn't think that we would fall that hard that fast on the Bronze Age, but I will explain kind of why I think that was the case later on when we get to the key takeaways. But here is the side-by-side Silver and Bronze Age Index, really getting close to prices we were seeing in 2020. And it's been my hypothesis sort of on the channel in the last few months that if you see a book out there that is being priced near its 2020 price, that might be a really good opportunity to buy. And speaking of buying comic books, let's take a moment to talk about the sponsor of this video, Torpedo Comics. Now, if you guys don't know, Torpedo Comics is one of the best comic book stores in the country. They're based out of Las Vegas, Nevada, and also have locations in the Southern California area as well. They also have this online store, torpedocomics.com, where they have all kinds of good stuff. They got slabs here, they got raw comics, they got toys, they got pop figurines, they even have some trading cards if you're into that sort of thing. But of course, you guys know me, I like my raw comics, and I can very easily search their store. So if I go over here to this tab and type in Spider-Man, maybe I want to find some Spider-Man books, I click on that, and I can see some modern comic books here, I can see some Silver Age stuff, I can see some Bronze Age stuff. So there's a lot of opportunity to find cool books on their store. And if you use my promo code SWAGGLEHOSS, you'll be able to save 10% off on your order, which is going to be a good thing considering that comic book prices are already going down and you get to save 10% more. What is not to love about that? So definitely go check out torpedocomics.com, and thank you to them for sponsoring this video. All right, let's quickly zoom into the charts right here and take a look at the month to month. Last October, like I already mentioned, we were at the $55,000 range, dropped to $49,000 here in the Silver Age. That is a decrease of 11%. The second or third most we've seen as far as a month-to-month decrease in this calendar year. For the Bronze Age, October, we're at 50,000, dropping down now to 43,000, and that's a 14% decrease. So an even bigger decrease than the Silver Age, which makes sense to me because I've been mentioning that, you know, the Bronze Age was a little bit too hot still in the previous videos and the previous updates. So it did make sense that they had to kind of catch up in terms of their decrease in order to get proportional back to the Silver Age. And it looks like this was the month that they actually did that. Some key takeaways to talk about, and these are where I think it's really interesting as far as, like, say, the capitulation is concerned. So if we look at the Silver Age book values, we saw that in this particular month, 16% of the books went down in value this month. Only 6% went up. And then the key stat I think that we have to talk about is that 19% of the books did not have a sale this month. So that suggests a couple different things to me. I mean, one, it could just be a coincidence that a book didn't go on sale this month, so there was no opportunities for the market to buy it. But what I really think usually happens in this case, because we're talking about, you know, these are the 100 books that have the highest volume of sales out there, is to me, like, it feels like either sellers have not sort of capitulated to the prices, or buyers are becoming sort of more cautious of the downturn of the market, and they're unwilling to pay whatever the asking prices are for those current Silver Age keys. So we saw 19 books not make a sale in this particular month. That is a lot higher than it usually is. For context, in any given month, maybe we would see like 7, 8, or 9 books that didn't get sold in a particular month. So I think that's really where we see the value of the index having the pullback in this particular month. And I would suspect that if dealers end up adjusting their prices to the current market, there's going to be more eager buyers willing to pay those prices. And that's why I'm a little more bullish on the months of December and January. Bronze book values right there, we see 26% of the index for the bronze has gone down in value, 12% have gone up, and 50% push. Generally speaking, that is kind of in line to what we've sort of seen in previous versions of these updates. Now, here's the month-by-month graph. Last time I was talking about the month of October going on a downslope, and it was my prediction that the month of November was going to be an even lower month. And sure enough, here we are. In the history of the Silver Age index, I should say, we're paying attention to the orange line here. That is the current year we're talking about. But in the history of this particular index, November typically is a down month in comparison to October, which made me think that we would get that again. And then as we can see, December is usually a month that goes up in value in comparison to November. So I have the assumption that, you know, when we get to next month in December, we're actually going to see a bounce off of the current floor that we're on. I'll quickly hop over to the projections here, but we won't belabor this. I just want to kind of reiterate that, you know, year over year, you know, we're expecting 15 to 20% of the, you know, return on our investment of the index here. I have predicted that the Silver Age should be around the $50,000 to $54,000 range in December, which basically puts us kind of right in line to where we want to be. Bronze Age, I think, should be at the $49,000 range in the month of December. So I think we are going to probably hit those projections, would be my guess, when we get to this index update next month. But let's talk about the trend lines. This is, I think, the most important part, or the key takeaway that we sort of want to discuss, and I kind of want to leave you guys with here as we, you know, think about what is to come in the coming months for comic books. It looks to be that we are officially back in the trend line, if not just a little bit below the trend line when we're talking about, you know, the Bronze Age and the Silver Age, as far as, like, you know, the middle trend line. You know, obviously there's room for error. There's a window when we're talking about this, and there's nothing to suggest that we can't even drop below the trend line. In fact, if we do drop below the trend line, I would say that, this is one of the greatest times to buy in maybe, the last 5 years of comic books. That would actually be sort of my argument. So that's kind of exciting if, the next coming months actually do show us that. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for buyers. Now, I do think in December we are going to see higher months for both indexes, but the question is, what are we going to see in January, February, and March? Now, it's totally possible that we could be, hovering on the low side of the trend line for the next, say, 4 months or so. I think by the time we get to April or May, we might start to see some movement, on the high end of the index. I could be totally wrong. I'm just kind of, shooting from the hip and guessing here. But one of the things I kind of wanted to point out to you guys as we look at this graph is let's pay attention to, early 2020 in January, February, March, April. You can see right there, and specifically I want to point out the Bronze Age graph, which is the gold graph you can see right there. And that particular index was trading below the trend line for quite some time. Like if you go back to August of 2019, you can see that the index was actually a lot higher than what we were getting in those early months of 2020, meaning, the values of those comic books were quite down for a little bit of time. I think that that's possible that we might be seeing that in early 2023. I mean, if you guys remember, early 2022 was when the COVID lockdown started. We saw that huge stock market crash for a couple months, and then it rallied right away, kind of in the May and June time. And the correlation with comic books right there is that we did actually see them trading lower for a little bit of time. So I could see our months of January, February, and March of next year kind of being on the low end, if that's kind of where we're thinking this market is going to be. I know a lot of you guys have said that, maybe we're going to be trading below market levels for the entirety of the year. We'll see what happens, if that ends up being the case. Obviously, I can't predict the future, but, I'm a little more bullish on our scenario to kind of see a little bit better of returns starting around, April and May. But before we wrap up the video, I did kind of want to show you guys one other market that I think is super interesting as far as the correlation between its values and comic book values. And I want to actually put the Bitcoin value chart over top of the one we're looking at right now. So let me pull that up and tell me what you guys see when I overlay the value of Bitcoin. Look at that. Look at the charts and tell me that there isn't a total correlation between this chart right here and the Bitcoin one. This is not perfectly drawn to scale, but generally speaking, it is around the same months where we saw a meteoric rise for Bitcoin in that January, February range, kind of peaked around April and May, did have a pretty big pullback, pretty big correction, then had a dead cat bounce, at the end of the year and the sort of the beginning of 2020. And then since, around February of 2020 has been kind of on this downward trajectory all the way to where we are now. Yet the value of Bitcoin, even with all its crash and all the memes going against it, is still a higher value than what it was selling for in 2020. And I think that the comic book market is sort of seeing the same thing. Now, I know a lot of you guys out there are not crypto believers, you're not Bitcoin believers, but when I go to other channels and watch other, content creators talk about their projections with Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency market, it does feel like a lot of their predictions are that when we get around to, April and May, we might just start to see a market trend upward for, those particular cryptocurrencies. They might be, seeing the bottom around January and February. And if there is in fact a correlation between the values of comic books and crypto, which makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, if all of a sudden you become a crypto millionaire, it makes a lot of sense that you might sort of YOLO into an AF-15, because you just made all this money and it's you're like, okay, cool, crypto's cool, comic books are cool, I'll just buy a bunch of these collectibles. So I can see that happening, and I could see that, if we start to see the crypto market start to recover in those months, we might also see comic books start to feel the effects of that rally as well. I know it's pretty crazy. I never really thought that there was going to be, much of a true correlation between comic book values and crypto values. But, when I look at the charts and I just really kind of step back and think about it, it does make a lot of sense to me. Anyways, that's all for this video. That was me kind of giving the market update for the indexes for November. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think we are at the bottom? Do you guys think we are going to zero? Drop me a like, comment, subscribe if you're enjoying the content. I'll see you in the next one.